We're going to spend a time now learning from God's Word. Last week we were learning about Mary, who used her most valuable treasure, a very expensive perfume, to get Jesus ready to head to the cross. This week we're going to learn that the cross was no surprise to Jesus and that Jesus was willing to follow God. Jesus had been doing many amazing things in his life. He'd been doing miracles like healing people and helping those who were poor. He'd been teaching everyone about God. But the religious leaders thought that he was lying about God. They thought that he wasn't playing by the rules. And so they wanted to capture him, to take him, and to kill him on the cross. We're actually going to hear now from the Bible exactly what happened in the story.
So kids, we're going to be reading from Matthew 26 verse 36 to chapter 27 verse 2. Jesus came with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." Jesus became very sad and troubled. Jesus went a little farther. He fell face down and prayed, "Father, if it is possible, spare me from this, but I want to do your plan." Jesus came back and found the disciples asleep. He asked Peter, "Couldn't you stay awake with me for 1 hour?" Jesus went away and prayed again. Then he found his disciples sleeping again. He said, "Are you still asleep? Get up, for it is almost time. Someone is going to betray me." Suddenly, Judas arrived. A large crowd carrying swords and clubs was with him. Judas kissed Jesus so the crowd would know who Jesus was. The men grabbed Jesus and arrested him. Peter pulled out his sword and tried to fight the men, but Jesus told Peter to put his sword away. Jesus said, "Isn't this what God planned all along?" Jesus' followers ran away, but Peter stayed nearby to watch. The men who arrested Jesus led him to the house of Caiaphas the high priest. The religious leaders were trying to find a reason to kill Jesus, but they could not. The high priest asked, "Do you have anything to say? Are you the Messiah, the Son of God?" Jesus replied, "Yes, that's right." The high priest said, "Aha! He has spoken against God." Caiaphas and the religious leaders did not want to believe that Jesus is God's son. They said Jesus was lying, but Jesus was telling the truth. The crowd said, "He deserves to die." They spit in Jesus' face and hit him. A servant saw Peter and asked, "Aren't you one of Jesus' disciples?" "No, I'm not," Peter said. Twice more, as Peter watched what was happening to Jesus, someone asked him if he was a follower of Jesus, but Peter said no. The next morning, the religious leaders decided how they would kill Jesus. Then they took him to Pilate, the governor, to be killed.
Wow, what a great story. So Jesus always knew that he was headed to the cross to die. The cross was no surprise to him. But did you hear in the story that Jesus was actually very sad about this? In fact, he prayed to God that if there was any other way, that God would do it. But you see, Jesus was willing to follow God and to go to the cross. You see, after Jesus prayed, he was arrested. He was taken away by the soldiers, and he was actually sold out by his own friend Judas. How sad would that have been? You see, Jesus was willing to go to the cross because he knew that that is what God wanted for him. The cross was no surprise to him. Jesus knew that there was only one way for people to come to God, for people to be forgiven, for the sins of the whole world to be saved. Jesus knew there was only one way for people to be welcomed into God's family again, and that would be through his death on the cross. You see, Jesus was willing to give up his life, to die on a cross, because he knew that that was the only way for people to be right with God. What great news is that? You see, the cross was no surprise to Jesus, and he was willing to follow God. And because Jesus was going to go and die on the cross, people like you, people like me, and people just like you could be welcomed into God's family through trusting in Jesus. Now, as we keep reading from the Bible story, next week we're going to learn exactly what it meant for Jesus to give up his life on a cross, and then what was going to happen 3 days later.
my name's Claudia and I'm one of the preschool kids church leaders here at Hope. Now we're going to spend some time praying about what we've learnt today. So why don't you repeat the words after me as I pray to God. Dear God, thank you for your great plan to save us from sin. Thank you for sending your son Jesus to be betrayed by his friends, to be arrested for something he didn't do, and to die on the cross to save us from sin. Thank you that the cross was no surprise to Jesus, and thank you that Jesus was willing to follow your plan. Help us to remember your great plan when we feel sad and worried. Amen.